Hello everyone, how are you doing today? So, in this presentation, we are going to talk about a few important techniques of answering the SAT grammar questions. This is book 10 of the SAT, the college board, the test 10 of college board, which is there on Khan Academy and also on the SAT website, the college board website. So, let's jump straight into the questions and we'll try to understand a few techniques with the help of this. So when you do the test, the most important thing is that you should follow certain steps, which are the standard steps that will help you to get to the answers really quickly. So what you should do is read the question first. Like if you look at this question looks like the one wherein you are supposed to you select the right conjunction and with and also and competing. And if I look at the question here, it says, like here it starts. Among other problems, Hersey noted the reading material available to grade scholars had a hard time competing with television. Oh, so there is a list, as you can see, there is a list made here. So we are trying to make a list, and from this list, we are trying to get the right answer. Okay, so we have a comma separated list here. Had a hard time competing with television, radio, and other media. Now, if it is a comma separated list, we know if there are more than three items, the last item has to be separated with a comma and an end. So it is like comma, a comma and an end. So I'll write this comma plus end, and that is why the given option, the way it is the best one. So I'll go with A, and we can move to the next question. The next question says the writer wants to include a quotation from this guy that supports the topic of the passage. Which choice best accomplishes this task? Now, that supports the topic. Now, what is the topic? The topic is related to creating magazines. So, for this, we have to have a little understanding of the context. How a cat in the hat changed children's education. So, I can see some keywords here: children's education. This magazine author, this guy, expressed concern about children in the United States were disengaged. So the children are disengaged. This is the context. Among other problems, this guy noted that reading material available was all this television, radio, and all this for children's attention. So he's talking about problems that reading available to this had to. So basically, this reading material was vying for attention or fighting for attention. Basically, I'm just reading this passage a little bit to get the context. The point is that he wants to make reading process very interesting, and the problem he's facing is that there is a competition from TV and other media, which he's finding a little difficult. So kids are not paying attention to books because they find TV and other media to be very, very more engaging. All right, so let's see what is the question. The writer wants to include a quotation from this guy that supports the topic of the passage. Okay, so we want to make it interesting. That's the topic. Let me just see what is the context here. So the sentence starts from the previous page. So I'll go to that. It says one solution he proposed was to make children's books more interesting. Interesting. So, okay, we want to make it interesting. So, let's read it. Interesting, since learning starts with failure. There's nothing like failure. That does not make sense. Interesting because journalism allows its readers to witness history. There's nothing like journalism and history, and fiction gives its readers an opportunity to live in. There's nothing like making it interesting from this one. Interesting with drawings like those of wonderful imaginative geniuses among children's illustrators. I see this quite appropriate. Drawings like those of wonderfully imaginative geniuses among children's illustrators. So basically, in order to make it interesting, he would go with making drawings. This looks like the best option in this context, so I'll select this. So this was a context question. We have to make sure that we understand the nature of the nature of the question. This was a context question. Okay. Let's go to the next one. The next one says, okay, I'll read the question first. So that gives me a little idea. Spotling the director, spotling, comma, the director, spotling the director. Okay. So this is like the the name of the person and his title, which is usually separated by two commas. So let me see where this comes. The story of this thing published began when William Spotling, the director of the education division at Darada. So I would, the director, I would like to have a comma here. The director of education division of publishing company, this. So this is the complete thing from here to all the way to this thing. This is a comma separated list. So what I would not like to have is this, the director of um, so the way it is fine because it starts with a comma here, it ends with the comma at this point. So this is like a comma separated list. I'll just delete this for the purpose of clarity. So it's like the title, the non-essential clause separated by two commas. The story of this thing began when this guy, the director of Darada at this place, read this article. So even so, the way to find out whether it is non-essential is just cut it off once and read the rest of the part. So if I cut it off like this, so if I see this, no, see, this is the two commas. I've cut everything between two commas. The story of Cat in the Hat's publication began when William Spotling read this guy's article and had an idea. So this his qualification, William Spottling's qualification are not really related to all the things happening here. So what this Spalding guy is immaterial with respect to what he did. So the director of education division at this. So this is just the qualification of this gentleman, which doesn't have anything to do with what follows here. So I can simply cut it and understand whether it's making sense or not, which means the way it is written with a comma makes a lot of sense. So I would go with option A. Let's go to the fourth one. The fourth one says, article I had an idea. Spotling agreed that there was a need for appealing books for beginning readers. He thought he would. Okay, so we want to combine it sort of. Most effectively combines. Okay. So, and he thought, yeah, these are two independent sentences then, and he would make sense. Readers dash, namely, what namely? So agreed there was a need for polling books for beginning readers. Namely, so it does not make sense. When we want to emphasize something, we make use of this long dash. So we don't want this. Semicolon is used when there are two independent sentences. And Spotling, well, that looks awkward from the first look itself, but I'll still check that. I mean, A is obviously my choice here, but then why would that C be wrong is what I'm thinking about. Need for appealing books for beginning readers. And Spotling thought he knew. There's no need of repeating the subject. I mean, it's not that far. The sentence is not that long that I need to repeat it. And he thought makes sense. So he is the pronoun which is referring to just one person being spoken here, which is Spotling. And he thought, so Spotling thought is this. And meanwhile, this kind of connector is not required here. So I would go with A, because these are two independent thoughts which are combined by a comma and an end. So comma and an end is used to combine two sentences, a compound sentence which is separated by a comma and a conjunction. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Having known this guy for many years and having maintained a professional relationship with him, okay, this part is underlined, support the information that follows. So I have to read what is followed. Kizel was an experienced writer and illustrator. having so some qualification of Gizel. This guy's qualification. He was an experienced writer and illustrator. So how can he be experienced writer and illustrator? He must have done that kind of work. Acquired an reputation of perfectionism for setting up standards for his work, being interested in politics, published nine. Yeah, this makes sense. This guy published nine children books and having received three nominees for Dada. So if somebody has published books, he would be a genius or an experienced writer. I'll go with D. So again, this was more like a context question. You have to expand your window a little bit. What we did was, since it says information that follows is this, and we focused on that and got the answer. Next question is question number 6, which says what kind of word should be used here. However, this new project presented him with an obstacle. Oh yeah, so there is a U-turn happening here. I can see that, and I think however makes sense there instead of all these other options. So I'll go with A. Seventh one, it says on the verge of giving up, this guy. So there was an obstacle. I'll just try to understand the story a little bit to read it quickly. New project management. This guy wrote Gizel to write to his entire book using a restricted vocabulary. Oh, so the master told this guy Gizel that boss use some simple vocabulary for an elementary school list of this many words. So which means we are supposed to use some limited words. Started two stories only to abandon them. Found that he needed to use words that were not on the list. On the verge of giving up, this guy's story finally hit upon an image that became its basis. A cat wearing all this. Okay. On the verge of giving up. So this very much fits in the context that he was really facing a problem, and so just to dramatize it, on the verge of giving up makes sense. I'll go with A. Okay, his at the end of duration of 9 month long. Oh my god, why so many words? Looks like a precision question. So 9 months later makes sense. This is okay. So an easy one. So sat looks, I mean, likes less number of words. It conveys the same meaning. Why should you spend too much time writing long sentences which do not convey any meaningful idea? The book was hit, and all this has been. Oh, this is tense question. Let me see what is being was is used here. Children were entertained, so this is again a past tense, by its plot about the antics of a mischievous cat, and were captivated. We are talking about children. Who is the subject? The book was a hit. The sentence ends here. Children is the subject here. They were entertained by its plot about the antics of a mischievous cat, and dash captivated by its, and oh, they were entertained by its plot and captivated by its. So these are two different things. Was, has been do not make sense, so I'll delete it. And captivated by its eye catching, so it's like a parallel structure. Were entertained by and captivated by, so that makes sense. I'll delete this is. Next question, followed colon many, followed comma many, followed dash many. What's happening here? I'll just see this one. So this is the last word here. Starts from, so I'll read the whole thing probably because I don't see the full stop very easily out here. Let me see. This bug was, so okay. So captivated by something, we did this. The book was an station. Children were entertained by its plot about the antics of this cat, and captivated by accurate illustrations and memorable rhythms. Its sales inspired another publishing company, this guy, to establish a series of early readers called beginner books. Okay, so this guy is now coming up with new books which featured works by this and other writers, and other publishers quickly followed suit. In the year, oh, I didn't see this full stop. In the year that followed, many talented writers. What is the use of? Oh, this sentence is I mean, it's a fragment. In the years that followed, It's not a full sentence. In the year that followed, I would rather like to just put it a comma, that is the time clause and what happened after that. So in the year that followed, yeah, I would go with this. Many talented writers and illustrators and all this did this. Oh, I couldn't see the full stop. That's why I ended up spending some time on this. Otherwise, it was easy. But perhaps the best proof of the Cat in the Hat success is not its influence on books, but its limited vocabulary and appealing word choice. Writer wants a conclusion that relates to all this. Okay. So what actually happened? This is like long last sentence, and he wants to conclude everything, which means it has to be a summation of everything which was spoken earlier. So I know that this was about books and children's books, and they wanted to make it as interesting as possible. So the whole message on the gist of the whole thing should come here. So when I know that this is the context, let me read it now. Impressive worldwide sales. Sales was not really the concern, so I'll not go with this. Enduring ability to delight children. Yeah, it does make sense. Does make sense, and engage them in learning how to read. Of course, important role in history of illustration. History of illustration. No, see. Okay, so this is how you can get to the answers. One thing which I want to emphasize at the end is that the way you did these questions is that you read the options first. You tried to figure out what kind of question is it. Is it punctuation question, subject verb agreement question, and certain rules of grammar? If you just quickly go through all of them, the first question was an comma separated list. If you've got three or more options, you have to separate it with a comma. The second question was related to yeah, it was more of a context question where we have to understand the question context. It was, they wanted to make books as interesting as TV programs, so that's why interesting with drawings like those wonderful imaginative geniuses among children's illustrators. They wanted to make it as interesting as possible. Children's books more interesting with drawings like those. So this was not about uh, the context. The context tells us that they wanted to make children's books interesting. So from by making drawings, we made it interesting. I mean, including drawings. Okay, Splotting agreed there was a need for appealing books for beginning readers. So, what was the context here? The third question. The story of the Cat in the Hat publication began when William Splodling. Nah, yeah, this is like a non essential information separated by two commas, which is fine. Splodling read this guy's article and had an idea. So, yeah, so qualifications of this person, Spalding, do not really, I mean, add any extra information, add any valuable information. So I consider this as extra information which is separated by two commas. So which is fine. I went with A here. So this was like non-essential clause. Uh, the next is the fourth one. Which choice most effectively combines the sentence at the underlined portion? So combining with the help of, yeah, these are two separate sentences as we saw. So with comma and the rest of the part, I mean, with a comma is used, a comma and a conjunction was used here. So like this, we went to the rules. We first read all the options first, and then we did the questions. This is how you can approach this test. I'll be putting answers to all other sections of this test as well. I hope you liked it, and thank you so much for watching.